Welcome to Someone's Gotta Drive. I do want to put a warning out there that this show may be triggering to some with childhood traumas. We speak about addiction and alcoholism a lot. The summer before senior year, we went to Niagara Falls. We didn't often go on vacations because my father said he didn't want to hear my mother and I fight. I didn't really care if she wanted to party on vacations because, well, that's what vacations were for. In Niagara Falls, we had a wonderful time. They even let me find the driving route from where we lived to Niagara Falls and back because I had often taken that route to a family reunion. Every year I went to these family reunions in Western PA, Pennsylvania, and Niagara Falls was just about 2 hours north of where those family reunions would be. So I kind of knew the route to Niagara Falls like the back of my hand already. We left in the middle of the night to beat the traffic, and we got there around 6 a.m. We got some sleep, and then my uncle woke me up for a walk around the city. He wanted to go to the duty-free shop to try to get some alcohol, and we were Canadian side, and I had never been to Canada before, so I didn't know what to expect. When we got there, he tried to purchase the alcohol. They actually wouldn't let him purchase it because he wasn't leaving Canada to go back to the US. So we just kind of walked through the city back to the hotel, and, he tried to find some alcohol, and I just didn't really care because, once again, we're on vacation. And as far as I knew, that's what vacation was for. You could drink morning, noon, and night. You could party. You can do whatever you want. We had a lot of fun. Mom and I did not argue while we were there. She didn't try to pick a fight with me either, and so I didn't see any reason to try to fight back. On the way home, I was giving my dad directions to get home, and my uncle, who was drunk, was telling my dad to go a different way. I did argue because I had the map and I knew where we were supposed to go, and he didn't. But I was told he was the adult and I'm the child, and I don't know what I'm doing. So my dad decided to take the way my uncle told him. About an hour in, it was pretty obvious that we were not going the right way. Meanwhile, my mom and my uncle were passing a flask and soda back and forth in the back seat and just getting hammered and getting ready to fall asleep because we also left in the middle of the night so we would beat traffic. Once we got on the right path, I was able to take a quick nap. After about 2 hours, my dad woke me up and was like, "Hey, can we check the map? I just want to make sure we're going in the right place." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And as we were driving somewhere in Concord, New York, there was a cop that had someone pulled over. And I said, "Hey, Dad, there's a cop." And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. They already have someone pulled over." But I wasn't talking about that cop. I was talking about the cop in the median. And sure enough, that cop swung in and pulled us right over. When the cop asked us whose car it was, we told him it was a rental and that we were coming back from Niagara Falls. And the first thing they did was say, "Pop the trunk," as if we had done something wrong. But those cops always knew that, tourists love hitting the duty-free shop or trying to bring things back over the line that maybe we didn't pay tax for. So my dad gets out of the car and pops the trunk. They check our receipts to show all the taxes paid and to make sure that we didn't bring anything that we shouldn't have across the border. Meanwhile, my mom and my uncle are passing a flask back and forth, drinking alcohol. And my mom kept asking me for another soda and to give her a drink. And I'm like, "No, Mom, we're pulled over. Dad's talking to cops. Like, wait until this is done. You don't." And she's fighting me right now, right this minute. And I'm just like, "All right, whatever." So I give her her drink and we go about our way. About a week or two later, we did get a ticket in the mail for about $77 for speeding. And I remember my mom being like, "What's this ticket for? Where is Concord, New York?" And I was just kind of like, "You don't remember us getting pulled over for speeding, do you?" And she was just like, "What are you talking about?" So it was another one of those situations where you knew that she was just so flabbergastingly drunk that she couldn't remember what was going on. But at the end of the day, the big issue that I had was that, well, we were already being pulled over for speeding. They're checking our car. Why give them another reason to cause problems? Meanwhile, my dad has no clue what's going on because he's just talking to the cops. Cops' job is to assess everything that's going on. So we were able to get out of that traffic stop with no problems other than for a speeding ticket and went about our day. But that's where my issues came to light, really. Again, let's be real. When you're on vacation, you can drink, you can do whatever you want to do. That's what vacation's for. And don't get me wrong, we're still technically on vacation, but it's one thing to have fun and not cause problems. It's another thing to be drinking in the vehicle when you shouldn't, have an open container, do all the things that you're not supposed to do and are against the law. Meanwhile, dad's talking to the cops. It was like a blatant, obvious disrespect. Not just for the law, it was like a disrespect for my dad and for me. And it just was disrespectful. And while the vacation was fun, the happiness didn't last for long. Every time I tried addressing my mother's addiction problem, I ended up becoming the bad guy. She would often say that whatever happened to the happy little girl that I used to know, or whatever happened to the little girl who used to love me, that I was a heartless person for not being able to accept her for the way she was. She always tried to make me out to be the bad guy. And in reality, I knew that this wasn't normal and that this wasn't the way people should act. And I really hated how she would make me feel guilty about all the things that she was doing. That summer was the summer that my high school boyfriend bought me the clothes for school. But that summer was also the summer that we fought a lot. He was trying to learn how to drive. He had a really bad problem with trying to learn how to parallel park to get his driver's license. My sister would come and take me to Virginia from time to time. And it just seemed like every time I turned around, every week, we were fighting about something else. And honestly, that's just not the relationship I wanted to have. It's not the life I wanted to live. And a lot of times we were also fighting over what was going on with my mom at home and what was normal and what shouldn't be normal, and how, she should be the parent and I shouldn't be acting as an adult, that I should be the child. I shouldn't have to work so hard. I shouldn't have to do all these things, and I should be preparing myself for college. But I just knew that college wasn't going to be my path. It just wasn't in my cards. If that was the case, we would have been talking colleges and going and searching at colleges and looking for what I want to do in life. That just wasn't what me and my family were doing. I was surviving, and I was surviving in an addiction household. At the beginning of that senior year, I decided to break up with that boyfriend. I tried to do all the things that would make me happy, hang out with people that I wanted to hang out with, and just try to be free. Because even though that high school boyfriend felt like freedom, 2 years later, it was feeling like a ball and chain. And I felt like at 17 years old, I shouldn't feel like this. Although easy classes that I thought were going to be easy were not that easy. I took classes like accounting and business law, and I thought those were going to be like easy classes I would easily comprehend, but honestly, way above my level. And I just wasn't really comprehending them well, and I was getting really stuck on them. Mom was constantly in and out of the hospital, so it was hard to stay awake during those classes. But I knew that this was it. This was my final year. And then after that, I'm an adult and I make all my own decisions, and I'm going to go and do all my own things. Mom nodding out was happening more and more frequently, and oftentimes she would think something happened when it really didn't. And one of those times was at the end of senior year when I was on my way to work. It was 8:30 in the morning, and she was nodding off on the side of her bed. Her face had been about a foot away from the floor, and she was sitting on the edge of her bed, and she was about to face plant into the floor. And I kept trying to wake her up. I was like, Mom, wake up, Mom, wake up. But nothing was working. So I had two options. I could either let her face plant on the floor, or I could lift her and get her onto her bed, and at least she'd be laying on her soft, comfy, king-size bed. At the time, she had to have been somewhere between 140 and 150 pounds, and I was about 100 pounds, maybe 110, soaking wet. So it was going to take a little force for me to get her onto her bed. But I picked her up, and I was able to push her onto her bed. This must have startled her because she woke up and was like, "How dare you?" And so I just tried to explain to her, you were about to face plant into the floor. It looked like you could have broken your nose. I was just trying to get you into a safe position. And no matter how many times I tried to wake you up, you just wouldn't wake up. And she was just like, "How dare you throw me forcefully and push me?" And that just wasn't the case. I was just trying to get her into a safe position. I don't know how many times this woman has fallen asleep on a toilet, has passed out on the floor, the whole 9 yards, and we have had to drag her to her bed, wipe her up while being on the toilet, clean up her vomit, the whole 9 yards. It just wasn't the case. I was just trying to put her in a safe position because she seriously was heroin addict, nodding out, a foot away from face planting into the floor, and the last thing I wanted was for her to break her nose. No matter how many times I tried to explain this, though, she wouldn't believe me. And I had no proof. I had no witnesses. This was also a time before smartphones. So it's not like I took a picture or had a video or anything like that. So I just said, to hell with it. And I'm going to work. So I went to work. I came home for lunch that day because I was only a mile away from the house. So why not come home for lunch? Check on Mom, make sure everything's okay. And when I saw my mom, she said, "We need to talk, but it can wait until after work." And I was like, "Well, I'm already here. What's up?" And she said, "I don't care for the way that you forcefully pushed me, and I fear that you're going to hurt me more. So I'm moving you out of the house, and you're going to go live with your uncle." I tried to explain myself again. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to put her in a safe place. She just wasn't going to listen and looked at me and said, "The decision's been made. You're going to go live with your uncle." I asked her if she talked to my dad about this, and she said, "Yep, I talked to your dad, and we think that this is going to be the best decision for everybody." I went to go find my dad and talk to him and explained to him the situation as well. And he just said, "You know, your mom and you don't get along. Let's see how this works. Maybe it's for the best. Let's just see how it works." And I looked at him and I said, "But I didn't do anything wrong." And he said, "It doesn't matter if you did anything right or wrong. You two just don't get along. Let's see how this works. It might be for the best." I literally looked at him and said, "Why won't you fight for me?" And at that moment, it was this clarity of, I have done everything you could possibly ask. I've been a straight A student. I've taken care of Mom. I take her to her appointments. I've covered up from time to time when, she's asked me to take her to go see a friend. And, her and that friend end up melting their friend's pills and injecting them in their veins so they can get high. When my mom insists that I take her to the liquor store, I was always trying to be the good, compliant child. I was always trying to do what was right. But at the same time, that meant that I was vocal in saying when things were wrong. And it was like no one wanted to hear it. Everyone wanted to sweep it under the rug. And then at the end of the day, I became the scapegoat. Between the ages of 12 and 15, my parents ended up getting the first family computer. It was a Gateway. And I remember my uncle showing my parents how to use it. I knew how to use it because they were teaching us in school. But one of the things that my uncle was showing my parents how to do was look at porn. And I knew at least, that you don't do that because you're going to get viruses and things are going to happen to your computer. Well, one day, the only thing I had when I was in those four walls in my room was my stereo. It was my music. It was the radio. And one day, my dad tried to get on the computer and it was broken because there was a virus on it. And he couldn't get on it to see what he wanted to see and do what he wanted to do. But instead of blaming himself for, looking at porn sites and looking at things that he shouldn't, he immediately scapegoated me and said, she's the reason why it's broke. My uncle even tried to explain to him, nope, she definitely knows how to use a computer. She knows the rules. She knows what would give you a virus and what wouldn't. So I got on the phone with Gateway. I literally stayed up for 2 days straight trying to get their computer fixed. I did get it fixed, but even they could confirm that was because they went onto a website that they shouldn't have. And this was late 90s. So yeah, it was just as common then with all those pop-up ads that would come up and everything else. And because of that, my stereo got taken away. And I was told I wasn't allowed to listen to music anymore. I not only was the scapegoat, I was being punished for something that he did. And here I was years later thinking that maybe we got past that, but obviously not, because here I am again, being the scapegoat, being blamed for something. And honestly, I probably should have just let her smash her face into the floor. But I just cared too much. And what was it my mom said? What happened to the little girl that used to love me? I do love you, and I'm trying to make sure you don't hurt yourself. And that's where it came to that realization of you can't help those who don't want to be helped. Because every time I tried, I got in trouble or I got some sort of repercussion that was unjust. And this time, I was being kicked out. I looked at my dad and flat out said to him, "You're going to be next." And he laughed at me. "Oh, you're kidding." "No, you're going to be next. You're going to come home from work one day and she's going to move all of your stuff out of the room or out of the house that you built with your own two hands." And he just laughed at me. 3 years later, that did happen. And I'll never forget getting that phone call. So 2 weeks before graduation, I spoke with my uncle and he said, "Yeah, I know what you did. And I know what you did wasn't forceful. I know you were trying your best. But honestly, we also know that your mom has these addiction problems and we need to get you out of that situation." My uncle loved to act like he didn't have an addiction problem. Like he could stop drinking whenever, he could stop snorting coke, he could stop smoking weed. He only did it when he wanted to. He acted always, and I mean always, holier than thou, higher than mighty. And so he was just like, "We know this wasn't your fault. I know you weren't trying to hurt your mother. And you know what? Maybe it's best that you do come and stay with me and get away from her because I don't think you're in a good situation right now." So over a matter of 2 weeks, I packed up everything I owned little by little, moved it an hour away to my uncle's house so that the day after I graduated, I no longer lived in my parents' house. This was 2 weeks before I graduated high school. Here I am at the end of my senior year. And everyone's having fun. Everyone's having graduation parties and reminiscing about what it was like to be in school and how they're going to miss their friends. And honestly, I wasn't going to miss any of it. I couldn't have given a hoot. I had a few friends that I was going to miss, but honestly, I was too ashamed to even tell anybody that I had gotten kicked out. I couldn't even enjoy the remaining few weeks of my senior year. Because why? I had been kicked out and told that I was a bad person by my own parents, by my own mother. And in that moment, I didn't feel worthy anymore. I didn't feel worthy of anything again. And I thought I had gotten past that. I had tried my best to put a smile on my face, to push through it, to act like it wasn't bothering me, and to be excited for this new endeavor. I remember that my grandmother was not able to see my sister walk down the aisle in the audience. She had to go sit in another room and watch it on a TV when she graduated because there wasn't enough room. This time, my grandmother was so super excited. Why? Because she was going to get to finally sit and watch her grandchild walk across the stage and graduate from high school. My senior class was 444 students. So we had to actually go to a college university and rent their stadium. So that way we could have all of our parents and people there to watch us walk across the stage. And, while we're all getting together at my parents' house, it was hard to smile during the pictures. It was hard to enjoy that moment. And I remember everyone being like, will you just smile? And it was like, you literally just ruined the last 2 weeks of my senior year. And you expect me to be happy. You expect me to smile. You expect me to not feel like a piece of crap. When you told me that I forcefully hurt you, and I didn't. I knew I wasn't a bad kid. I did everything I could to get good grades, to work hard, to be a good kid, and to do right by my family. And it all kind of blew up in my face. It felt like years of work just blew up in my face. So the day I graduated, it was a good day. My grandmother was happy to see me. I felt like I had made my family proud to a certain degree. Afterwards, we did a senior trip, they called it, where we went on this cruise in the middle of the Baltimore Inner Harbor. And it was late at night. I think my dad came and picked me up from the school anywhere between like 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. I went home. I fell asleep. Woke up that morning and decided to start a new day. It was the last time I slept in that bed. It was going to be the last time that I could call this my home. So I woke up, packed what little stuff I had left in my car, went to work, and at the end of that shift, instead of going home to my parents' house, I drove an hour away to my uncle's, crawled into my bunk bed, and tried to be excited about this new chapter I was about to start.